All right. So in today's class, we will talk about this family Sarcocystidae. In the last class, we have discussed about uh, uh, toxoplasma, which is under the family Sarcocystidae. Here today we shall continue Sarcosystis and Neospora. Okay, so these are not very big chapter, so we'll shall try to finish two parasites in this class. Okay, so we know that this P-complexion group, which belong to subclass Coccidia, which belong to the family Sarcocystidae, we know that they are infecting the gastrointestinal tract of their definitive host. Point number one. Point number two, those parasites which belongs to Sarcocystidae, they infect the flesh. Okay, that means they form a cyst like bladder in the muscular tissue. Okay, so here in today's, the first parasite that we will be discussing is the parasite under Sarcocystidae. Okay, so in 1843 measure, he found out that there is a white cyst in the striated muscles, but he did not know what it is. Then for the following 20 years, it was not known what it is, and they just name it as measure tubules. But in 1899, then scientists, they have coined the name as Sarcosystis meiseriana. Okay, they named the parasite Sarcosystis meiseriana, which is the parasites, the sarcocystic parasites of pig that we will study in the coming two slides. Okay, so but it was not known. Nothing much was known. Not known. Then later on, in 1967, when the event of electron microscopy have come and they have demonstrated they have demonstrated the bradyzoid, and when on ultrastructural studies, it was found that there are organelles which were similar with other apicomplexan group. So with this light, they have come to realize that the parasite is in a P-complexion group, belong to such and such coccidian. Okay, so this is a brief history. Okay, so the parasites, just like toxoplasma, it is having heterogeneous life cycle. That means there is one definitive host. I mean, there is a definitive host, and there is also a requirement for intermediate host. Okay, so the definitive host could be canine, feline, and man, that we will talk about later on. Okay, the intermediate host could be different types of mammals. Okay, so here Sarcosystis. Okay, that means sarcosis. I have said sarx, S-A-R-X, or sarcos. In Greek word, it means flesh. And kystis, that means bladder or a cyst, which developed as a microsarcocyst or a macrosarcocyst, depending on the type of the host they are infecting. And this is also going to be important for their pathogenesis, whether microsarcosis or macrosarcosis. This will depend on the pathogenesis. Okay, so if you see the general characteristic, let's see line by line, because this is important. The carnivorous host becomes infected by eating the sarcocyst or the tissue cyst. Okay, carnivores, that means the definitive host, it could be dog or it could be cat or even human being, could be infected by eating the infected herbivorous tissue. Or in other words, we can say the bradyzoids, or in other words, we can say the sarcocyst or the tissue cyst. Point number one. Point number two, the intermediate host or the herbivorous host become infected by ingesting the sporulated oocyst or the oocyst from the feces of the definitive host. Point number two. Point number three, the schizogony occurs. That means the asexual reproduction occurs in the endothelial cells of the visceral organs of the intermediate host, and the gametogony occurs and sporulation occurs in the carnivorous host. Here I want to mention one point here. The sporulation, just like Cryptosporidium, there is no, that means the parasite is sporulated in situ. The parasite is sporulated in the intestinal lumen itself. That means sporocyst containing sporozoid. The oocyst containing sporocyst, which contains sporozoid, which is readily infective, is developed inside the intestinal lumen. Unlike Eimeria or unlike Toxoplasma, which the indefinitive host voided out the unsporulated oocyst, then in the environment there is sporulation. Okay, there are two parasites where there is sporulations in the intestinal lumen. One is Cryptosporidium, another one is Sarcosystis. Okay, so this is the life cycle. Okay, so we will start from here. Man, dog, or cat, they are the definitive host from where they have passed out the sporulated oocyst. So once this sporulated oocyst or the oocyst is ingested by this intermediate host, pig or cattle, the sporozoid are released. That means from the sporulated, from the oocyst, it releases the sporocyst. The sporocyst release the sporozoid. The sporozoid release in the small bowel, that means in the small intestine, and they penetrate the intestinal mucosa, they develop first generation cyzone. Okay, then the merozoid or the merozoid which develop from the first generation cyzone, they multiplied by cyzogony. Of course, the cyzone which the sporozoid, the merozoid which develop from the first generation cyzone comes to the blood vessels and they are distributed all over the body. Okay, the merozoid are released in the bloodstream and subsequently they infect the blood vessels. Okay, so in this, I mean, in the release sporozoid will, the release merozoid will infect the muscular tissue. Okay, so in the muscular tissue there will be formation of the bradyzoid. That means there will be formation of the cyst, or that means there will be formation of the sarcocyst. So this sarcocyst will wait for the definitive host to ingest, dog, cat, or human being, depending on the species. I'm just repeating once again for clarification. The definitive host voided out in the sporulated oocysts which are ingested by the intermediate host. The sporozoid, okay, once this sporulated oocyst is ingested by the intermediate host like cattle and pigs, they release the sporozoid in the intestine. Okay, so this sporozoid will penetrate on the intestinal mucosa. They will form first generation cyzone. Okay, the daughter's organism, that is the merozoid from the first generation cyzone, will come and distributed through blood vessels into various tissue. Okay, so subsequently they will form a tissue cyst or a sarcocyst, which will wait for the definitive host to ingest. Okay, so once the tissue cyst is ingested by the definitive host, the cyst will rupture in the intestinal lumen and there will be formation of gametogony, male gametocytes, female gametocytes. Then there will be formation of zygote. This zygote will form the oocyst. The oocyst will sporulate and it will be passing out in the environment. It's very simple. Okay, this is what happened in the definitive host. This is what happened in the intermediate host. Okay, this is the another example, another diagram of the life cycle. Here I'm repeating, on ingestion of the sporulated oocyst by the intermediate host, there will be formation of first generation cyzone, could be second generation cyzone, or even there could be third generation cyzone. Subsequently, the merozoid will subsequently form the sarcocyst, which will wait for the host, the definitive host, to ingest. Once this sarcocyst is ingested by the definitive host, there will be formation of male gametocytes or female gametocytes, and there will be formation of a zygote. This zygote will sporulate in the intestinal lumen and it will be passed out for ingestion by the intermediate host. I hope it is clear. Okay, so what is sarcocyst? Okay, sarcocyst is a tissue cyst which are, in these there are two regions that is recognized. One is the peripheral region, which contain the metrocyte, or in other words we can call it as mother cell, which multiplied by endodiogeny and yielding the bradyzoids at the cortical portion. The peripheral portion contain the metrocytes and the cortical portion or the center portion will contain the bradyzoids. Okay, next point is sarcocysts are more host specific to their intermediate host than their definitive host, that we will see in the next slides. Okay, so here, as I have said, depending on the host, it will develop as microsarcosis or macrosarcosis. Okay, so those parasites which are of dog origin, that means which is the definitive host of dog, which is the definitive host, then the definitive host is dog, usually are developing microsarcosis and they are pathogenic. Okay, then those parasites which have cat as their definitive host, they usually develop macrosarcosis and usually they are non-pathogenic. You can see here this spindle shape sarcosis in the wall of esophagus, the outer wall of esophagus, then they do not cause any harm. But this sarcosis, which occurs in the musculature tissue, they could cause a serious disease that we will see. Okay, so these are, I have listed out some of the parasites and their definitive host, their intermediate host, and their sarcocyst, and there is whether they are pathogenic or not. Let's see some few. Okay, one is Sarcosystis cruzi. The definitive host is canine. Okay, so here whether it is, if it is canine, it will be microsarcosis. If it is microsarcosis, yes, it will be pathogenic. Okay, let's see another one. Sarcosystis fusiformis, the definitive host is feline, it will develop macrosarcosis, it will not be pathogenic. Let's see Sarcosystis tenella, which is canine, the definitive host is, the type of sarcosis is microsarcosis, which is really highly pathogenic. Okay, here, one thing. In Salisbury book, it is written Sarcosystis tenella is not pathogenic, but that is actually wrong. Okay, it is actually very highly pathogenic. Another one will be Sarcosis myceriana that I told you that it is the canine, pig is the intermediate host, it developed microsarcosis and it is pathogenic. Okay, like this, the canine derived, the parasites which derived from canine usually develop microsarcosis and they are usually pathogenic. On the contrary, those parasites of feline origin, they are usually non-pathogenic and they develop macrosarcosis. Okay, coming to human. Okay, in human also I told you that there are some parasites. One is Sarcosystis sui hominis. Okay, where the man is the definitive host. Here also, just like dog origin, it is microsarcosis and there is pathogenic effect in man as well as pig. Sarcosis hominis, which is of cattle. Okay, of course in men, but the definitive intermediate host is cattle and it is also pathogenic. Sarcosystis lindemanii, here the disease is not, the organism is not very well known. Okay, one more thing that is really, really important is Sarcosystis neurona, which is in India, it is not available, but in Americas, this is very, very important. The opossum is the in definitive host. Horse. In horse, there will be equine protozoal meningitis. Okay, there will be equine protozoal meningitis. Okay, let's see one by one some of the important one. Okay, so here Sarcosystis cruzi, or from the name Sarcosystis bovicanis. Bovi means the intermediate host, canis means the definitive host. Okay, Sarcosystis cruzi or Sarcosystis bovicanis, which cause Dalmeny disease. Okay, this is important. Dalmeny disease, please note it down. Okay, so as it is of dog origin, it will develop as microsarcosis in the skeletal muscle. Here in this case, the pathogenic effect will be, there will be fever, there will be anorexia, there will be muscular twitching, there will be reduction in milk yield, not milk, sorry, here, milk yield, and there will be hypersalivation, and there will be abortion. Okay, one thing that is really important is there will be mottled appearance. There will be striped interspace of hemorrhagic and pale areas. There will be a striped interspace of hemorrhagic and pale areas that can be seen on the musculature, which is of mottled appearance in the skeletal muscle. Okay, so this is the life cycle Okay, another one is Sarcosystis tenella that I told you. In Sol B it is written non-pathogenic, but it is Sarcosystis ovicanis, that means it is pathogenic. Ovi means ovine, sheep, and canis, that is the dog origin. Okay, dog sheep cycle, it is also microsarcosis. It is highly pathogenic for lambs. Okay, it causes anorexia, weight loss, anemia, abortion. Okay, another one is Sarcosis eriaticanis. This also is dog sheep cycle, but it is less pathogenic than Sarcosystis tenella. Okay, then zoonotic sarcosis are those Sarcosystis hominis, or in other words, we can call Sarcosystis bovihominis. Hominis means human being, bovi means intermediate host. Okay, this human cattle cycle, this is pathogenic to calf, and this is also causing pathogenic effect in human being, sort of diarrhea. Sarcosystis sui hominis, hominis definitive host, sui swine, that means it is the intermediate host. Intermediate host. Human pig cycle. This is pathogenic to pig that cause weight loss. There will be muscular tremor and abortion and even death. Okay, it is more pathogenic to man as compared to Sarcosystis hominis or Sarcosystis bovihominis. All right, so I think we are running out of 10. It's giving me 10 minutes, so I'll just pause it. I will come once again.